No holiday knows consumerism quite like Christmas. Hallmark movies, lights, high stress levels and unrealistic expectations, presents, and of course the big guy in red, Satan. Well, kind of. Let's take a look at Krampus and other Christmas time cryptids. I typically refer to myself raised as religiously confused, half Jewish conservative, half staunch Irish Catholic. I also don't know how that was ever supposed to work out in any capacity that isn't this. But being in the good old US of A, there is no avoiding Christmas no matter what you celebrate or who you are. Christmas is quite literally shoved down your throat to the utmost degree. And just like most Christian-based faith is, most of it was just stolen from the pagans. And over time, most of it, if not all original context, was completely wiped out, like the fertility rituals ending up being dyeing eggs for zombie Jesus during Easter. But outside the US, a lot of their original paganistic creatures stuck around for their Christian Christmas holiday season, so today we'll take a look at cannibal, scarecrows to corpse horses, and every which way in between when we take a peek at what it's like Christmas around the world. First things first, like usual, I have to tell you how we even got here. How did we even get to a Christmas, a Yuletide, a winter celebration of any type? The middle of the winter has been a celebrated time for ages. For the Romans, they had two main winter holidays. The first, Saturnalia, which you can quickly infer was for their god Saturn, who you may have some familiarity involving the depictions of him eating his son. This was a 2-week festival all for the god of horticulture, as well as on December 25th, they celebrate the birth of their sun god Mithra. Both of these holidays were like most celebrations at that time, drunken feasts. They would even let the slaves have time off to celebrate the holiday themselves. So the winter was seen as a very joyous and celebratory time, even all the way back then. As for the pagans, the winter solstice was a joyous time for them. This was the celebration of the longest nights of winter being over and looking forward to the now extended light time they were gonna get. In particular for the Norse, it was Yule. In recognition of the returning of the sun, they would light logs and feast until they completely burned out, most of the time running over weeks. In Germany, our home to our most infamous cryptid, people honored the pagan god Odin. During the midwinter holiday, Germans were terrified of Odin. They believed he would make nocturnal flights through the sky to observe people and then decide who would prosper or perish. Because of this, many people chose to stay inside, and this already gives us this connotation, if you can notice, of good and bad. In this case, for the Germans, it was Odin deciding, but if you can kind of inflect on what we ended up getting, it would be Saint Nick deciding who is good or bad. Not necessarily prosper or perish, but we're already getting the sense of there is someone out there judging you in the night sky, deciding if you are good or bad. And as I just touched on, undeniably the most famous Christmas monster cryptid evildoer is that of the Krampus. Although his origins are pre-Christianic, coming out of pagan societies of the Central and Eastern Alps in Switzerland, Southern Germany, and Western Austria, Krampen, which means claw in Old High German, is the son of the Norse god of the underworld, Hel. A hybrid of man and goat with giant horns, hoot feet, and a large forked tongue, standing much taller than men. When you see depictions of him, it evokes a very specific visual to you that now, in the modern day, we have the direct correlation to what is the devil, which actually partially comes from the depictions of the devil in the medieval time, but I will discuss how we get to what a devil looks like nowadays at a different time. It is so extensive. At one point, he was green. But nowadays, when you take a peek at him, you have this connotation of a Baphomet, a devil, a goat man, evil, Satan. But at the time, he was majorly a representation of the winter. Harsh, cold, unforgiving, similar to when we touched on the topic of the Wendigo for indigenous people, having this physical conduit for the winter time itself. The belief in Krampus was prevalent in this part of Central Europe when the Romans conquered the region during the reign of Emperor Caesar Augustus. It can be assumed that the pagan people who inhabited this part of the Alps at the time had already begun to associate the Krampus with the 5th and 6th of December, and held a festival in which the Krampus featured heavily at the time of the year. And back to that whole medieval section of our visuals, because of the medieval times, we have a lot of lost information and documentation on cultural practices, religious things, general day-to-day stuff. The medieval times, we don't have the most information back, so it is actually partially unclear if he was celebrated pre that or if he just kind of showed up after the fact. But this Pagan Krampus festival would easily be the predecessor to the Night of the Krampus, which, like most pagan aspects of the culture, were intertwined into the new Christian faith being spread and or forced upon in the end of the 10th century. By the 11th century, Krampus would find his place within the Feast of St. Nicholas, playing the yin to his yang, the evil to the good, the dark to the light. St. Nick already had a few casts of characters assembled with him for the wintertime, so it wasn't really a hard do to kind of sneak the Krampus in to, once again, like most things, ingrain pagan culture into the new Christianic faith to kind of help with conversion means. And since St. Nick was a saint, it's kind of odd to have them dish out punishments, although they absolutely do to a degree. It made sense to have this new figure come in and be the one who dishes out bad. Because why are you gonna be good if nothing bad happens to you? Because that's Catholicism. Now, what would a Krampus do to you if you were a naughty, no good child? There's an array of things, but more often than not, you would get beat and or whipped with a stack of birch twigs piled together. Sometimes people will depict this as whips, but more often than not, it is just a bunch of branches. Along with this, Krampus would carry a basket or a sack, similar to St. Nick, his good buddy, but in turn, he would take children to hell in it, or even at times eat them, or they would just completely disappear if you were up to no good. Although they integrated him into their god-honoring system, that did not stop their later attempt of banning him. During the 12th century, the Catholic Church attempted to completely ban and banish Krampus celebrations because of his resemblance to the devil. More attempts to rid the country of Krampus followed in 1934 at the hands of Austria's conservative Christian Social Party. None of this was ever successful though, and the Krampus still stands as a Yule-tide figure to this day in Germany and other regions surrounding. As well as this, a very controversial Krampus run takes place every year, and I see articles every year where they're kind of contemplating if they're going to keep doing it or not, but as of this standing right now, it is still happening. The reason being they have this debate is these are wildly dangerous. People dress up in Krampus regalia, obviously, and they are free to go around and hit people who are in the vicinity for this situation. So they go around hitting people, they're running, chasing, trampling, doing all this. There has been a few deaths due to the Krampus run, as well as many various injuries. I said deaths, I meant broken bones. I don't know if anyone died at Krampus run.
People were killed.
Nobody was killed at Stonewall.
Nobody was killed?
I just talked, I don't know. Here, did that happen? I think it's no. I think I just completely gaslit myself. I also will say that Krampus movie, honestly, is not half bad. I watched it a few years ago being like, it's gonna be garbage. It's not bad. I don't mind it. If I for some reason was having a holiday party and needed a movie on, obviously you're gonna watch Black Christmas. If you have not seen the original Black Christmas, go watch the original Black Christmas. Period. That is the holiday movie. It's not bad. I'd queue it up after Black Christmas, But undeniably, what's more scary than a Krampus? Probably a cannibalistic scarecrow who will disembowel and eat you. And Germany would actually take a part in this tale as well, but we are actually heading over to France for this Christmas monster, and it is partially based between fact and fiction. But of course, we're going to be taking a look at the fiction because that's a hell of a lot more interesting. Hans Trapp was based off a real German knight of the same name. According to legend, he was rich, powerful, merciless man who was feared by the people. Hungry for power, he created deals with the devil to get it. Eventually, the Pope himself heard of what Hans was doing with the devil and all these power-hungry traps he was setting, so he himself excommunicated him from the church altogether. This led to him losing his money and his land, being banished out of his small town in France into the mountains of Germany. This then created a power-hungry crazy man who is indebted to the devil, which isn't really someone you want hanging around. Being trapped in the mountains, he started to go absolutely crazy and became obsessed with the idea of eating human flesh. And with this, he enacted a plan. He donned himself in scarecrow regalia, stuffing his clothes with hay and sticks to look like he wasn't a man and he was just chilling on the road. Oh my god, the dog opened the door. That just scared me so bad. Cade! He set himself up on a lonely road waiting for a victim, and unfortunately, a 10-year-old shepherd boy would be it. While walking past Trapp in his disguise, the scarecrow would stab him with a stick and drag him back to his lair in the mountains. He began to slice his body into bits and roast him. It said God struck him with lightning and he fell down, bashed his head in, and died. To this day, parents in northern France warn their children that if they don't behave, Hans Trapp will show up as a scarecrow and get into their room and presumably just take them, but if you're a really vicious parent, I'm sure you'll tell them he's gonna slice and dice and eat them up. I will say there's not the most documentation on him. I don't think he's currently popularly celebrated in the region and or France in general. And I will say, don't know how they started tying him into Christmas. I think it's one of those boogeyman things. It's like, shit, we gotta scare the kids. How are we gonna scare the kids? Oh my god, that guy. Oh my god. Oh no. Yeah, no, that guy that ate that kid. Just say that guy's gonna come and eat the kids. Which, arguably, really French of them. I feel like we've talked enough about child consumption for now because we will be ending just right back on that track, but let's hop across the water to Wales and discuss a very mysterious entity, the Mari Lwyd. I know I'm saying it wrong, I'm not Welsh, sorry. The Mari Lwyd is a horse with a backstory just as mysterious as its appearance. A whole entire horse skull affixed to a pole covered in ribbon with light bulbs or glass put into the eye sockets to reflect would be puppeteered and carried by a man covered in an entire white sheet to give the appearance that he is the horse. This would be some weird, messed up sort of Christmas caroling in a way. The Mari Lwyd would be carried and followed with about a gaggle of typically 7 to 10 men, some also in different types of characters, similar to how we have Saint Nick and Krampus and their own little gang. Well, in Wales, the Mari has its own little gang. They would go house to house and trying to, in a song, convince the homeowner to let them in. Of course, the homeowner will deny, but they have to deny in song and have a reason. They will continue this back and forth until the homeowner relents and lets the entire group into their home, giving them food and drink. Again, in some weird persuasive Christmas carol. Now there's 2 backstories that are thought to be of the Mari Lwyd, but unfortunately, once again, because of us and the medieval times, we kind of have no clue. The first one is very simple, and arguably the one that I believe is the backstory. That the translation of Mari Lwyd is grey mare, connecting to the long-standing usage of how a pale horse can cross through the planes of existence to the underworld and back. This has been a long-standing thing in mythos for multiple cultures, centuries, and it's like vaguely common things, and once again, it's one of those things the Christians kind of used. I saw death riding on a pale horse. Pale horses are this otherworldly creature in almost all mythos. The other possible translation for Mari Lwyd is Grey Mary, which brings us to our Christianic sect of ideology. Some scholars have linked her to a legend connected to the nativity story, that a pregnant horse was sent out of the stables when Mary arrived to have Jesus, and that she spent days roaming land trying to find somewhere new to have her baby. The issue with the fact of this is that a lot of people who partake or celebrate in Mari Lwyd believe this is a pre-Christianic practice and creature entirely. But scholars cannot back this up at all. As I stated, there is no evidence of the Mari Lwyd pre-1800, which again is very far past when Christianity was spread throughout the nations. This, of course, can be chalked up to the whole medieval times and we didn't have documentation, or this absolutely just is a Christianic practice. I will say, it seems a little too pagan for me to believe the Christians came up with it, but that's just me. But even if this was a Christian tradition, like almost everything that's just not, guilt-inducing and normal, the Christian church actually did try to eradicate the practice of the Mari Lwyd. Specifically, Welsh Methodists and other Christian nonconformists criticized the Mari Lwyd in the 19th century, even referring to the tradition as sinful, as well as the changing social conditions. The holiday pastime did start to take a hard decline. But fortunately, nowadays, it is very much standing. If you go to most Welsh Christmas festivals, parades, events, or something, you'll probably see at least one Mari Lwyd kicking around. It is, again, more of a cultural thing versus a religious thing when it comes to entities like this, at least for the Mari Lwyd in this case. This is just a folklore tradition to have take place, and I think it's really sick. The concept of this, ghastly, corpse horse being, puppeteered by a man trying to convince you to let him in his home, it's an A24 movie waiting to happen. And now I would love to end with our baddest and my favorite Christmas time creature, Perchta, who is oftenly assumed to be Krampus's wife, related to Krampus, the female version of Krampus. I want to put it out here. I want to squash the rumors. She has no relation to Krampus. She has actually been around much longer than Krampus, and you could even argue probably they started taking visuals from her to Krampus and then back to her and created this mismatch of everything because everyone associates her with Krampus. She's not Krampus. She got nothing to do with him. That's not her man, and she don't even like him as far as I'm concerned. She has her own intentions and goals and is objectively far more intense and brutal as the Krampus. Other than terrorizing children, being Yuletide monsters who also now have demonic depictions of themselves, that's really where the similarities of them end completely. One of Perchta's most unusual traits is that one of her feet is shaped like a goose or a swan's foot, but that actually plays a large part into her identity. It's part of what supports the idea that she actually inspired the creation of Mother Goose. Perchta was once known as a goddess in Alpine paganism, sharing the role of the guardian of the beasts and appearing in the 12 days of Christmas, overseeing the act of spinning, which spinning is, if you're familiar with Rapunzel, how she spins the straw into gold. That's spinning, the textile act of spinning, not like spinning, you know? This also draws relation to Odin's wife, another goddess Frigg, who was the goddess of spinning, and Perchta and her share a lot of overlapping things, and in some people relate to her as just a different translation, or they are two separate entities, but either way, they're very entwined with each other. She was always seen depicted in two senses, either amazingly gorgeous or horribly haggard and scary, and over time, the depictions of her being gorgeous have just been completely lost. Everyone depicts her as essentially, once again, a female Krampus, like this gross monster with nasty features and just viciously horrifying to look at, but once again, this was absolutely not always the case of her. She had ties to the representation of being a guardian for children and having an intense, nurturing nature. While she may have punished naughty kids, she was much better known for rewarding the good in adults and children, appearing as an early gift giver of Christmas beloved by children awaiting her arrival. But of course, as I'm referring to you now, this absolutely is not the current viewpoint of her as an entity at all. At first, Perchta was the upholder of cultural taboos, such as the ban on spinning during the holidays. Specifically, in some folklore, she was said to roam the countryside in the winter, entering homes during the 12 days of Christmas. She would know whether the children and young servants of the household had behaved well and worked hard all year. If she deemed them good, they would find a small silver coin the next day in their possession. But if she deemed them naughty, she would slit their bellies open, remove their stomach and guts, and stuff the whole with straw and pebbles. She would also do this exact same act to anyone who did not eat the traditional meal for the holiday of fish and gruel. The condemning of Perchta began early, all the way in the 1400s, with the cult of Perchta, under which followers left food and drink for her, in hope of receiving wealth and abundance. This was being condemned completely in Bavaria. Along with this, it started this evil connotation that she actually would be the one who brought unbaptized children to hell with her. She was the one that would carry them through to there. Well, previously, she was referred to as being this guardian who would actually carry them to a safe afterlife. This is part due to the fact that the Christians came in and started depicting the afterlife aspects pagans had as heaven and hell. There's good or there's evil. So if this woman's dragging children to the afterlife, even though obviously there's heaven, she obviously has to be some servant to the devil, and started creating more negative connotations and depictions of Perchta. And like our other creatures, Christianity did come in and create this demonized view of them, especially surrounding their holiday. Because Christmas being the birth of little baby Jesus, why are you going to have cannibal scarecrows, devil women, dead horses running around? It is something that the Christian sects are going to view as demonic and evil and horrible, like they do with most pagan things. And I do want to come in and clarify, I have no problem with Christianity or Christian-based religions or Catholicism, like any of it at all. But this is something we do have to take a look at and be able to, unfortunately, point the finger at. This is why things have become erased or warped. It is just a matter of fact. I, to the utmost degree, believe in free will. Every man and woman is a star. Your will is the law. You are your own person. I have no issues and don't want anyone to feel the demonization of their belief system or their religion. It's just important to discuss what happened to people and places, cultures, and long-standing belief systems that have either been warped or completely eradicated due to the spread or force of new belief systems. And it's completely undeniable that over time, it has completely eradicated faith and culture structures that have been in countries for long-standing points, which is something that's really disheartening to see. And I do find joy that when I look at stuff, I see that more people are resurging old cultural practices into modern day, because things don't have to be religious connotated. Like, again, I say I'm like culturally Jewish. I don't go, obviously I don't go to temple, but there's something about having that identity to your country and your people and your places to still uphold. And I will say, nothing will ever get even close to the consumerism final boss that is Christmas and Coca-Cola's product of Santa Claus, but I think it's important that we remember where stuff's from and what happened. Also, just how boring is it that we don't have crazy monsters running around? Do you know how much fun it would be I would be so into Christmas if we had monsters too. I'm cool with Santa, he's whatever, but if we had like crazy monsters running around, I would spend so much money on Christmas time. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Have you heard of any of these? Are you familiar with them? Do you practice them? Or have you never heard of any of this? Let me know down below. And once again, I want to say thank you so much for watching. Once again, we're back at square one. It is what it is. The best thing you can do for me is to share my videos. Sharing my videos is the best way to help me. And once again, thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Make sure to do all of those things. I will see you next time. Have a good one. Bye.